I'm going to read a citation of Professor Kingsley Moghalu, and then I will ask you all to join me to welcome him to the stage. Professor Kingsley Moghalu is the founder and president of Strategies LLC, a global risk management and investment advisory firm that has advised multinationals, private equity, asset management, and other emerging market investors. He's also the founder and president of the Institute for Governance and Economic Reform with Transformation, a public policy think tank. Kingsley Moghalu served as Deputy Governor of Central Bank of Nigeria from 2009 to 2014. In this critical role, Kingsley supervised and led the execution of extensive reforms that stabilized a 20 trillion naira Nigerian banking sector and improved its structure, inclusiveness, corporate governance, and risk management after the global financial crisis of 2008. He led the CBN's reforms on financial inclusion, including the introduction of non-interest banking, Islamic banking. Dr. Moghalu also led reforms in the payment systems, including the development and introduction of the unique identifier PEL, which is called Bank Verification Number (BVN), that created the enabling environment for the massive growth of the fintech industry in Nigeria. He was also a member of the Central Bank's Monetary Policy Committee that brought inflation in Nigeria down from double digit to a single digit, 8% in 2014. Dr. Moghalu served as chairman of the board of directors of the Nigerian Export-Import Bank (NEXIM) and the Financial Institutions Training Center (FITC), and as a member of the board of directors of the CBN, Securities and Exchange Commission, Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria (AMCON), and Kuala Lumpur-based Alliance for Financial Inclusion (AFI) and the International Islamic Liquidity Management Corporation. After a distinguished 5-year tenure at the CBN, he was appointed Professor of Practice in International Business and Public Policy at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at the Tufts University in Boston, USA. He taught the course Emerging Africa in the World Economy to students from 20 countries in North America, Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Africa at the prestigious Graduate School of International Affairs from 2015 to 2017. And is a non-resident senior fellow in the Council of Emerging Market Enterprise at the Fletcher School. Kingsley Moghalu was also lectured at Harvard University. I thought we should put your hands together. Lectured at Harvard University, the University of Oxford, London School of Economics, and the School of Arts International Studies at Johns Hopkins University, as well. I don't have to just talk. As well as the Wharton School of Business, University of Oxford, for the Michaelmas term of 2021, October to December 2021. He recently served as Special Envoy of the United Nations Development Program (UNDP) on post-COVID development finance for Africa. Professor Moghalu previously worked in the United Nations system for 17 years in international security, nation building, and diplomatic assignment at the UN Secretariat headquarters in New York and in duty stations in Cambodia, Croatia, Rwanda, Switzerland, rising to the highest career rank of director and serving as a member of the high-level design panel on the United Nations Internal Justice System that reforms the global organization's internal transparency, accountability, and dispute resolution system at the level of Under Secretary General. Now let me say something. My first introduction to Professor Moghalu was when I went to the of Peace. It was about 5 years ago, I guess, when he represented Rwanda at the UN Council, something like that. He made a case against on the oppression of the Tutsis in Rwanda, I was thinking about the 35-year-old Nigerian defending Rwanda. I think we need to celebrate this man one more time. Come on. I have to wrap it up. He's the author of a number of books, including The Virgin Africa, How the Global Economy's Last Frontier Can Prosper and Matter, Penguin Books. Professor Moghalu obtained his Doctor of Philosophy degree in International Relations at the London School of Economics, the MA at the Fletcher School at Tufts University, and the LLB degree from the University of Nigeria in Nsukka. He holds a certificate in risk management from the Institute of Risk Management in London and received executive education in leading economic growth and transformation, corporate governance, and microeconomic management from Harvard Kennedy School of Government, Harvard Business School, and the International Monetary Fund Institute. He got several honors and distinctions, including the Nigerian National Honor of the Officer of the Order of the Niger, OON, Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, FICB, and the degree of Doctor of Laws, LLB, honoris causa from Chukwuemeka Ojukwu University, Anambra State University in Nigeria. Professor Moghalu also holds the traditional title of Ifekaiko of Nnewi Kingdom. Kingsley Moghalu is the founder of the Isaac Moghalu Foundation, a member of the board of directors of the Academic Council of the United Nations System, and an advisory board of the Business Plan for Peace and advisory council of the Official Monetary and Financial Institutions Forum. He is married to Marianne Moghalu, and they have 4 children. Professor Moghalu was a candidate for the office of the President of Nigeria in the country's general elections in 2019, and I also know that he also participated in the process in 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I want us to be on our feet to make warm and welcome our keynote speaker for PEL Conference 2021, the person of Professor Kingsley, Moghalu, PhD, OON, FICB, the PEL of Nnewi Kingdom. You will do well to clap and to be conceived. Please go ahead and celebrate it. Welcome him to the panel. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello. Distinguished, mostly young ladies and gentlemen, citizens of Cannon, residents of Cannon. I see a lot of members of the National Youth Service Corps, NYC. I love my heart. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. The leader of the PEL conference, Ola Barnabas, and his colleagues, I am very deeply touched and grateful for the very warm welcome you have given me this afternoon. I would like to talk to you on the subject of transformations, personal, digital, and national. I hope it is what you would like me to talk about. The reason I say that I hope it's what you would like me to talk about is that sometimes we may misunderstand invitations. It is possible, and you go off course, and you speak for 30 minutes or 40 minutes to yourself, and then the audience might just clap politely. It has never really happened to me, but I know it sometimes happened. And I'll tell you a small story. When I was a very young man, I think I was about 26 or so, and I was a lawyer and a journalist at Newswatch magazine in Lagos in the late 1980s. Some of us who are old enough will remember Newswatch, which was the leading news magazine in Nigeria at the time. But I was also a special correspondent for some international newspapers. I was doing that to earn dollars and to internationalize my CV, because I always planned to have an international career. And so one of the newspapers for which I was applying to become a special correspondent was a newspaper called the Christian Science Monitor. Prestigious newspapers in America at the time. And so I wrote to them, and they said to me, the editor wrote back to me and said, "Thank you for your interest in writing for the Christian Science Monitor. We would be interested for you to submit a story on speculation." You know what I did? I went back. I said, speculation. And I wrote a very nice philosophical article on the subject, speculation and the future of mankind. And I talked about Isaac Newton sitting under the tree and the falling apple and how the law of gravity came about. I really did a lot of research, and I sent this article to the Christian Science Monitor. You know, in those days, there was no WhatsApp, there was no emojis, but I can now think about the man laughing his head off. He wrote back to me with screaming exclamation marks. He said, "Oh my God, this is a beautiful essay, but it is not what we were looking for." When we say submit an essay on speculation, it means try. Submit a story so we can assess it and know whether we will engage you as a correspondent. So we were asking you to submit something for us to assess. That's what we mean by the phrase on speculation. But this essay is so impressive that you will become our correspondent. So it's just a story as I start my discussion on the subject of transformation. The Oxford English Dictionary defines transformation as, quote unquote, a marked change in form, nature, or appearance. In other words, when we talk about transformation in any situation, we are speaking about a fundamental change, creating new realities from old realities. That's what we mean when we talk about transformation. The history of the world is a history of transformation. And the greatness of any nation and the greatness of us as individuals, each and every one of us, lies in our ability to transform. By the time we have finished this conversation, it is my great earnest hope that everyone here will become transformed and a transformer. So you can ask your neighbor seated near to you, are you a transformer? We all must become transformers. I have always sought to be a transformational leader. And that is the basis on which I have sought the presidency of Nigeria, but it is still morning yet on creation day, like Chinua Achebe would say. It's still morning on the day of creation. The afternoon has not yet come, let alone the evening. So one day, I believe we will get there and we will together transform Nigeria and transform our reality. Politics is a marathon. It is not a sprint. If you look at some of the older politicians today who are still seeking power, some of them have been at it for 30 years, and they are still contesting elections. Some of them looking to be president for the past 30 years. They have not yet won, but they are still at it. It will not take me 30 years, but we will get there. Many of you may be aware of what happened recently in the primaries of my political party, and which led me to resign because of what I considered political corruption. The inducement of delegates and things like that. You know, delegate is now a new profession in Nigeria. You have doctors, you have lawyers, you have engineers, you have journalists, farmers, and you now have delegates. So, but the only problem with this profession is that it's a seasonal profession. So, only 4 years. I don't think you can sustain yourself with that sort of profession. But why delegates are a very interesting group of people is that in our democracy, they are the ones that over the past 20-something years have given us the wrong leaders. Because the wrong leaders start from the party primary. Once you have candidates who are not transformers, who are not transformational leaders, and then they come into the general election, you are left with very weak choices, and then you begin to say the lesser evil. You have heard that phrase, the lesser evil. Anybody, any society that thinks like that is at a very low level and cannot achieve transformation. Look at the United Kingdom and Boris Yeltsin. Just because his colleague was accused of sexual misconduct, and the way he handled it, it looked as if he was trying to defend him. And various other scandalous embarrassments. And the kind of things they call scandalous embarrassment in the Western world. When we see it and we know what our leaders do here, we start laughing. You know, somebody had attended a party during COVID, and the whole country was up in arms, and they were asking him to resign. He stood. Recently, several of his ministers resigned. And he said, oh, these people are planning a coup. I'm not going anywhere. But by the time the ministers were resigning, one by one, the pressure was too much on him. He had to resign. It's called accountability. Without accountability, there can be no transformation in any society. There is consequence. There must be consequence for wrongdoing. And if you find a society where there is no consequence, no matter what you do, that society is in the dark ages. Because that's when kings and queens did whatever they wanted with no consequence. The evolution of societies, the transformation of societies has brought about transparency, it has brought about accountability. Remember that. So I was saying that the history of the world is a history of transformation. There are personal and organizational transformations. We have technological transformations. We have cultural transformations. We have economic transformation. And we have national transformation. Let me start a little bit with personal transformation, because transformations begin with individuals. When we talk about personal transformation, we are talking about a deep change in each and every one of us that leaves us more balanced, more strong as individuals, that leaves us more, mentally healthy. We become an improved version of our old self. After congratulating Sanusi, I gave him the brochure of my company. Throughout the dinner, he kept reading my brochure. So my wife, at some point, she kicked me under the table. I don't know those of you who are married, and I don't know if your wives kick you under the table. But she kicked me under the table. Of course, nobody knows what is going on. So I looked at her, and she says to me in Igbo, "But your friend is not socializing. He's just busy reading your propaganda." So I said, well, I replied to Igbo, I said, you never know, business may come from it. Because I said to him, if you need any risk management consultancy support, sure, we can help you. After some time, he closed the thing, and he says, well, you know what, Kingsley, I have a better idea. I said, oh, what is it? He said, would you like to be a deputy governor of the central bank? It's like, what is he talking about? Just like that. But he had made his assessment. And of course, he knew me by reputation, even before we met, just as I knew him by reputation. And this is how the journey back to Nigeria started. So Sanusi returns to Nigeria, takes my CV, which he had already asked me to give him, and walks straight to President Umaru Yar'Adua. And he says to Yar'Adua, I met this man abroad, very distinguished Nigerian. This vacancy that we have, he is the one that I want to fill it. Because we are going to be doing some reforms. Those reforms are going to be controversial. They will be powerful reforms. Change the banking sector in this country forever. I need somebody who will work with me closely and lead the implementation of those reforms. And it should be somebody who is an international personality, not somebody who has worked with every managing director. So when you want to discipline them, the MDs of the bank, they will say, oh boy, why are you doing this? Because you don't need CPM. Said, I don't want that. I want somebody that will tell the bank managing director, sit down there, and will sit down there. And that's what I did. They'll go behind and whisper among themselves, foreign, see foreign. But they were disciplined. They were held accountable. And we changed the banking system in this country. Yes. No deposit lost one copper. We transformed the banking system. Today, you can take your phone and press pay, and send money or receive money. I led the team that did that. We call it the digitalization, to use technicalities. We called it the digitalization of the real-time gross settlement system, RTGSS. The team that I led worked to develop the bank verification number, the BVN. It was done as a project. When we finished it, we introduced it into the banking system. Today, your BVN, you know that you cannot leave home without it. So, I've given you my own personal story to say that transformations can happen for us individually, and that we can also transform our society and our countries. That's just a personal story. A word on technological and digital transformation, which we know has had perhaps the greatest impact in the history of the world. technology. It is what decides the countries that are at the top and the countries that are at the bottom. And it manifests itself in a number of ways. We see it in military technology. We see it in the Industrial Revolution and the innovation that came from the Industrial Revolution. We see it with the computer and digital transformation, which has improved business processes, business efficiency and productivity, and business models. The computer has done a lot. We have seen it in artificial intelligence in the world today. And technology still has huge implications for what we call the world of work. Because if robots begin to do what everybody used to do, which is the case now in many countries in the Western world, what happens to the workforce? Will they now all become unemployed? Not necessarily. We can shift our skills and all learn how to control robots. There are many ways we can adapt, because in the Industrial Revolution, this is what happened. What people used to do, breaking their back with their hands for hours and hours and days, a machine would just do it. And then many people became unemployed. So there was a political fight over the Industrial Revolution. And the government wanted to stop those inventions because people are losing their jobs. But the society adapted to the use of those inventions. So these are just some of the examples. And I've given you the example of the digitalization of the banking system. Cultural transformations must happen. Cultural transformations must what? They must happen. Because if you look at history, you see that when a society continues to hold on to the way it used to do things 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, that society is always poor and they cannot make progress. Culture is a human thing. Human beings can adapt it for progress. Where I come from in Nigeria, 200 years ago, if you gave birth to twins, they will kill the twins because they'll say it's what? A bad omen. Today, my wife and I, in our marriage, we kept praying that we will have twins. We were not so fortunate. But at some point, the culture was making it an evil omen. But this is just because of lack of knowledge. Today, we know the scientific process that gives birth to twins, that brings twins. 200-300 years ago, our people in the village, they didn't know that. Women, the subjugation of women, making women chattel as if they're just property. This is a culture that needs to change. Women, can I get a hand from you? Hello? Oh, yes. Because if you go to every society that is doing well, everybody is going to Rwanda now. I know when Rwanda had the genocide and was a ghost town and a ghost country, today they have done so well. But if you look at Rwanda closely, you will see that because of the genocide in which 1 million men were killed in 3 months, that society, women are carrying Rwanda. It's women. Their parliament has more women than men. Women hold a lot of important positions. It does not mean that men and women are the same. No, I'm talking about equality of opportunity. That is, get the distinction that nobody is superior or inferior, even though we are different. Show me the man who is or has been or will be pregnant for 9 months, and I will change my view. But it doesn't exist. So there is a difference. But God created us like that because He has a plan for the perpetuation of the human race. So I'm talking about cultural transformations. If you go to Malaysia, if you go to Turkey, if you go to, even in Saudi, after some time, they had to change their laws and women had to be allowed to start driving. They were not driving before. So we, in this country, we have to look at ourselves. inwardly, retrospection, very seriously, and see, are there some aspects of culture that we need to change so that we can make better economic progress? So, let me close with national transformation. National transformation depends on what I have said before, a worldview. Why is it that 60 years after independence, Nigeria is still 50% of our population are living in extreme poverty? Our gross domestic product per capita, that is to say, when you calculate all our GDP and divide it with our population, is just $2,000. And that is where it has been for almost 60 years. Why is it that Singapore, Malaysia, Brazil, countries that we were at par with in the early 60s have moved on? In Nigeria today, we are talking about tribe. We are talking about religion. We are talking about all the things that divide us. And we're a country, but we are not yet a nation. How can we transform Nigeria from country to nation? We need a worldview. That worldview can only be brought about and inculcated by what? A transformational leader. A leader that can see the future and can take us all along with a dream team of capable people. And that worldview, we will inculcate it with what? With the educational system and through the media. If we have a national orientation agency, if I were president of Nigeria today, that is going to be the job of that agency, inculcating the Nigerian worldview and fire all of us up with individual ambition and with national ambition, with unity of purpose where we're all going, that we can be united even in our diversity. Nigeria is not the only country where you have Christians and Muslims. It's not the only country where you have several different ethnic groups. It is not an excuse for failure. It's not an excuse for disunity. The reason we have what we have here is that we have failed leaders. Leaders who have no national ambition. Their ambition is only for their pockets. We have people who will come here to Kano and tell you that power has to remain in the north. But you don't ask them. All the power that you have had, almost 46 years out of the 60 years of independence, how far in the north? How far? If a southern politician comes and says, oh, power has to remain in the south, you ask him, how far in the south? Are we Japan? Are we South Korea? Are we Singapore? And if you come to the north, you ask them, are we Turkey? Are we Dubai? Are we Malaysia? But when you have a leader with a worldview like Mustafa Kemal Atatürk of Turkey, he was the one that revolutionized Turkey and took Turkey out of backwardness and made it a modern country. Today, Turkey is a member of NATO. This is the kind of leadership we need in Nigeria. Men and women who have vision, who can create a national ambition that stands above the things that divide us. If you go to America, you have the whites, you have the blacks, you have the Asians. There are still all those racial tensions. We saw it when George, whatever his name, was shot by the police. But what you have in America is that if you challenge America as a nation, everybody will remember one thing: we are Americans. In Nigeria today, the only thing that binds us is football. Immediately, Omokachi and all these people, Super Eagles, they come into the field. Everybody is clapping. Everybody is happy. You forget that the man sitting next to you is a Muslim or a Christian. You forget that he's Igbo, he's Yoruba. We need that feeling created permanently in this country. It doesn't mean you're not a Muslim. It doesn't mean I'm not a Christian. We can live together. It's called the management of diversity. And in 17 years in the United Nations, that is what I did. And that's why I say that if I could do it in the world, if I'm given an opportunity, I can do it in this country. It's not rocket science. An American child goes to the school. From the earliest primary school, they teach him American history. In Nigeria, they don't want us to know our history. Why? Because they want to keep us in darkness. They want to keep manipulating us. They want to keep manipulating us with ethnic politics, with religious politics. They don't want you to know about the Civil War. Why? In America, one of the first things you must study is the Civil War. Every country has had its challenges, but we learn from them. The reason history is important is not so that we will use it as brickbats against one another. No, it is so that we can learn from our mistakes and build a better country for the future. And so when we teach our history, honestly, in a balanced way, there is no part of this country that has not contributed to the problems we're having. Anybody that tells you that, oh, it's all those IPOB people that are the problem in Nigeria, when I look at such a person, I just shake my head. Somebody can turn around and say, it's that Boko Haram people. Some people believe that because there is an agitation by a small group in the southeast, people from that place have no right to aspire to the presidency. Well, how about those from the north? Should we now say that because of Boko Haram and the bandits, no northerner can aspire to be president of Nigeria? People don't see injustice when they are actually doing it because of prejudice, bad leadership. We need to understand our history. We need to say that never again can 3 million people die in a civil war. We don't want another war. We want a leadership that can transform Nigeria's economy, transform our institutions with accountability, transform our military strength, transform our foreign affairs, transform the vision our young people have, so that when they see the Nigerian flag, they have the highest level of patriotism to this country called Nigeria. Many people will tell you that Nigeria is a mistake. The 2014 amalgamation, Well, yes, but we were not the only ones who were colonized by the British. We were not the only ones who were colonized by the French. The Asians, Singapore was a colony. Malaysia was once a colony. Name them. Within 50 years, they've changed their destiny. And we're still here talking about colonialism and the British. Goodbye to them. Let us make our own future. Ladies and gentlemen, it is possible. Transformations can happen. And let us understand why they matter, why they're important, and determine, each and every one of us, that we will be transformed and that we will be transformers. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are speakers and there is Professor Kingsley Moghalu. Go ahead. And for the first time in PEL conference, I hope it is worth your time. Come on now, is that the best you can do? Aren't we honored? Thank you, Hajia. Please come up. Celebrate. Come on now. I think we should really celebrate. This is lovely. You know, we will have the time some other day to tell you the story of how Professor Kingsley Moghalu came to PEL conference this year.